So I get the comment a lot, why do I say expat instead of immigrant? There's several reasons. Actually two main ones that I would say. Let's start with the simpler one, which is a linguistic issue, okay? I know that Norwegians speak really good English, but maybe you don't know. In Norwegian, you can say innvandrer, somebody who wanders into a society, or utvandrer. In English, we have immigrant and emigrant. Immigrant and emigrant. Immigrant means somebody who comes into a country, an invandrer. Emigrant is an utvandrer. So I immigrated to Norway, but I emigrated from America. This may not seem like a huge difference to you in Norway who have a language very sensitive to vowel sounds, but English is not sensitive in the same way. And in particular, where I come from in Texas, we say the I sound, the short I sound, for the E sound a lot. Like, I can vividly remember being at Norwegian school in Minnesota when I was 13 and asking somebody to borrow a pen, like to write with. And there were pens all over the table, and they said they didn't have one because they were from Minnesota. And I said, I uttalte pin, because pin is how we say pen in most Texas dialects. And literally other Americans did not understand. And now this has happened to me, because from that moment on, I changed and made sure I said pen. But sometimes I get confused when I hear Texans say pin. So if I'm doing a voiceover title to a clip really quick to just introduce it, like what I think is an immigrant from America, Americans in particular who hear that, or maybe if Norwegians don't know the difference between emigrant and immigrant, they're not going to understand actually my meaning, and my message is going to be not communicated well to the Americans who may need to hear it. In those cases, yes, I use expat to make it clearer linguistically. The other reason is social. Now, a lot of people say it's wrong to say expat or rude because that basically sets you above other immigrants. Like, it's a gentrified way to say immigrant, or to not see yourself as like something lowly, like an immigrant. But basically, as a white middle-class American, I try to listen from the communities that are affected by these statements, other immigrants, for instance. And when I moved here, somebody who was an immigrant to America told me that they felt I should call myself an expat until the time at which I decided to fully stay in Norway. Or at least that second part I think was implied. They just said, for now, you're an expat. And given that this opinion came from somebody who had immigrated to America, I felt like also it's a very Americans and white people, we can take up all the air in the room. And I never, ever, ever, yes, I fled from things in America. Yes, I was leaving because society there is not good. But I never want to presume, the way I think a lot of supposed allies might try to do, that my struggle is on par with a refugee who had to flee their home in the middle of the night because of a war. So for a very long time, I felt it's more respectful to call myself an expat, to acknowledge the privilege I inherently have in Norway, not just as a white person, but as the type of white person that is most privileged in Norway. Because don't get me started on how Norway can treat Polish people, okay? And there's so many ways to argue this. Eventually, I've ended up just saying immigrant, because more people have seemed to suggest to me that it's offensive and putting myself above people to call myself an expat. But the reason I've used expat for so long is because it seems the more deferential way to acknowledge that, yeah, it's been hard at times having immigrated here. But I have so much privilege as a white person, as the type of white person Norwegians like. Norwegians love America, or at least what America used to be, and as somebody who moved here fluent because I had a middle-class family that could send me to this weird boarding school. Like, saying expat seems to acknowledge that while I have struggles, I'm not trying to say, which many, many white Karens do, like, oh, like, I'm an immigrant too, like, I've been there. Like, no, you haven't been where a Somalian refugee family's been. So this is why, I mean, there isn't a great answer. Both have their problems, but this is to show that I've thought about this. I've thought through why I use which word and when. I didn't really switch to immigrant until we decided to actually immigrate here permanently. Before that, I tried to use expat because I was just a foreign worker. There you have it.